Hey, it's Jeremy from jeremy.net. So it is time for my monthly figure drawing purge. I go through all my drawings from the previous month of figure drawing class and pull out some pieces that I'm going to post for my blog and separate those from the ones that I won't be posting and just maybe tell you a little bit about just what I've been up to. So I'm currently taking a class with Carl Ganas at the Animation Guild, and this class is on costume and draped figure. So, starting off here, the main point of this class is really just to understand how how folds, drapery, how cloth, works with the actual figure in terms of like describing what the form is doing or what the actual body the figure is doing. Or in costume, we're kind of, figure out costume as a way of expressing the inside, the inner story of the character. So this one so far, I'm not going to post because first off, there's not anything particularly interesting going on with it. I don't think I particularly described the folds well. For most of the ideas of the stuff I'm posting on my blog, it's simply a drawing that I feel accomplishes what it means to what I've been trying to accomplish, or if it's simply a drawing that I think is interesting. Maybe I learned something particular in that pose. There's some things I was trying to do that I've gotten better at. And in this one, I don't think that it expresses anything particularly great that I was trying to accomplish. Like a lot of these feel more like indications of where folds should be than really describing the volumes of them. Plus, a pretty regular struggle that I have in this class is that because the goal is to study the actual drapery and folds, I don't necessarily spend as much time blocking out the proportions. And this character feels very out of proportion, particularly the arms and the upper torso in comparison to the lower torso and even that head. These are all things that sitting even after the model's done with their break, I can look at them and say, I really did, it's way out of proportion. I didn't catch those things. In the moment, when I'm actually working from the figure, a lot of times I just try to get down a quick block in to go straight to working on the folds, what we're supposed to, the point of the class. And a lot of times I miss those basics. And that's something that I've been thinking about a lot in general, is my capacity to make those corrections. I'm very aware of making those corrections. I've shown you when I do my my figure drawing nightmares, where I go through bad drawings and redraw them to try and fix problems. I'm very much aware of these mistakes that I make, and I'm trying to learn how to be present while I'm drawing. In a strange way, mindfulness really does tie into this, and being able to fix those mistakes in the moment as opposed to fixing them even if it's like a minute after the pose is done. While the model's on a break, I'll start making doodles and say, oh, what? Like I can literally in 2 minutes make the corrections that fix a horrible drawing that I spent 8 minutes on. And I'm trying to learn how to make those corrections the first time in the moment. So that's a challenge, to shift in thinking, because it's hard to explain. It's something that I understand conceptually, but getting my hand and my mind to do it in the moment is a shift. And it's something that it's an ongoing struggle. This one, I think, is an interesting drawing in the fact that it does a better sense of describing the volumes, the arm going backwards, the other arm going forward, but it feels so incomplete. And normally I don't have a problem with incomplete and rough sketches, but this one doesn't feel like it says enough that it's really worthy of the blog. And again, with incomplete sketches, it's a matter of, does it say something, show something interesting? This one, I think, might be worthy of the blog, because this is very incomplete. The figure is blocked out so you understand the whole pose. You can understand what the figure's doing, but the only part that's even really remotely finished is this sleeve. But I think the point, this is me actually doing the point of the class, studying and describing folds wrapping around the form. And for that, I feel like this one is worthy of posting on the blog, even though this hand is abysmal. Fortunately, next semester I'm taking Carl's head, hands, and feet class, so I can work on my hands again. But that is another challenge, is the constant juggling in figure drawing between all the things that you consciously know you need to do better, the things you need to work on, versus trying to draw as furiously and quickly as possible and capture it all down, and trying to actually capture the energy of the model to make something that feels kind of interesting and lifelike. This drawing, I wasn't necessarily planning to post this one, but I think I will. And the reason for it is because in this drawing, this is a perfect example of both what I do in my figure drawing nightmares and what I was saying just moments ago. This drawing was probably like an 8-minute drawing, this large one. And I could see what I was trying to describe, and I drew folds, but it felt very lumpy. It felt very choppy. It didn't unify the whole. Like when you do a gesture drawing, you're trying to get a sense of the whole figure in as few lines as possible to kind of break it, to kind of unify it before you go into the details of anatomy and what the different parts of the body are doing and how you want to describe them. So I did this first drawing. Then I just was looking at it and I kind of said, well, what am I really trying to say here? And I did a smaller, simple sketch. But in this sketch, what I was trying to do was, I started with drawing the figure. It was really just a sphere for the pelvis, and then sort of half elliptical, half blocky shape for the upper part of the torso, and then sort of cylinders, more conish cylinders coming out for the legs. But once I blocked those simple shapes in, I looked at, I started with this volume, and then that volume, and then the volume up here. And what I'm talking about is I started drawing folds, but I was trying to draw not the fold, but the volume of the fold. What is the form that fold is describing? Whereas in this, I've got a shape that's similar, but it's got all these extra details in here. And it doesn't really, those extra details ended up taking away from the final form. Whereas I just said, there's a volume here of the part of the lower, sort of the belly, between where the pants are and where the upper torso goes in. There was a fold of cloth that sort of described, and he wasn't a model who had a paunch. It was more of just the way that the clothing hung off of his torso. He was actually a pretty muscular model. But the fact that I was trying to describe in this form, I created kind of a volume here, a soft volume that the forms, the folds, the drapery described, and then also kind of subtly describing the pull that would be sort of the latissimus dorsi going up into the arm, but really just describing it with just this simple kind of broad fold in there. And that's when I realized, okay, what I need to do is learn how to do this while I'm looking at the model, not afterwards as a post-mortem. And again, these are all things that I talk frequently about in terms of doing a post-mortem on my drawings. Oh, well, this is the drawing I did right after that. Right after that pose with the model, I sat down and I was thinking about it, and I really tried this one, even this, too detailed, too much going on, but I was really trying to think about the volumes of these folds. And what was frustrating was me understanding the concept and still not executing it very well. And it's sort of a strange thing, but there were a couple of drawings, and I think they might be in here, where I did feel like I was describing the volume of the folds and the forms. But this was just me putting a note on there. And you know what? I don't think I'm going to post this drawing. I may take a photo of that note and add it to like a folder I have of notes, things that I pick up in figure drawing class, observations. But in terms of actually posting it on the blog, I don't think it's blog worthy. Another reason I'm actually starting to eliminate more drawings and be a little harder on myself is also because I'm posting a lot more work in progress shots from Morningstar. And I'm kind of shifting the images in the blog to be more comic centric to the comic book I'm working on, because that's sort of the main thing. So originally when I first started posting figure drawings, it was just because I wanted to make sure I had an image to go with my blog posts every day, because it takes me so long to get a comic book done. I didn't necessarily have comic book stuff to post every day. But now that I really am trying to do a little bit something every day, whether it's thumbnails or or layouts, or when I'm actually inking. I really am saying, all right, I'm trying to work on my comic every day, so why not just share whatever it is I worked on? So other than the lettering, which is important, but not necessarily as interesting to look at when it's work in progress, I'm trying to just sort of share more comics related stuff as opposed to the figure drawings. That said, this drawing I think was decent. It's still flawed. I feel like I got sloppy and lazy in here in terms of the descriptions in here. But I feel in the arm, this is actually one of my better attempts at sort of describing light and volume in the folds. So yeah, I'll blog that one. This. I am going to blog these because these are not great drawings and they're not detailed drawings. But I do feel like this is what I was going for when I was saying that I was trying to draw folds that work with and describe the volumes. This very much, there wasn't a hard line underneath where his pecs were in the shirt, but there was a fold that sort of draped across, and I changed it to try and really describe the upper torso and then to describe the part of the torso before it goes into the pelvis. And then in here, sort of like the upper part of where the hip bones would be, I added some extra folds in there. And his clothing vaguely describe these. And I'm trying to learn how to make conscious choices, but not ones that are just random stylistic, but saying to consciously try and put a fold in there to describe the bone structure underneath or the volumes that his body's having underneath. The same here, just describing how the body turns from the rib cage to the lower back to the actual pelvis. So these drawings describe what I'm going for, and that's why I'm going to blog them. And I'm going to, well, they're definitely going to go in my notes. I don't know if I'm going to save the drawings, but I think that these couple of drawings I have right here are ones that are all right in that time period where right after I sort of realized that I could see how to describe these volumes with the folds. These drawings kind of came out of that too. So I think I'll post these also. And I'll tell you something that's extremely frustrating is it happens to me every class where about an hour in, I sort of get into the zone, it starts clicking, and I'm able to do the things I'm trying to do. And then invariably, in maybe the last half hour of the class, it could simply be fatigue. It could be me getting lazy. I don't know what, but I'm still enjoying figure drawing. But I start slipping out of that zone. And the things that I did feel like I was doing correctly, it ends up not going as well. And that's a little frustrating because it feels like kind of a flowers for Algernon thing where for a brief moment I actually see and understand and do, and then it starts to slip away. And that's one of the things that consciously I'm working on in terms of, I mentioned, mindfulness is trying to learn how to stay in the moment, to stay focused, to stay connected, to stay present. And this is some drapery studies I did in the class. They were interesting. Honestly, I don't think they're bad drawings. I don't know why, but I'm compelled to put these on the blog just to see if anyone comments or what their thoughts are about these. I should be doing a lot more of these because it's almost a drapery study like this is almost like doing a landscape study in a certain way. And I need to be doing more of those as well. But yeah, we'll put that one in. Let's see. This one's not bad, but it's not great. There's not a whole lot that's super interesting about it. Let's see. I think I will post this page because I do like the sense of character that these have. So these are a little bit more interesting. I don't know if I'll post the whole page or whether I'll just take a shot where I'm just cropped in on either each one of the top two figures individually, or maybe I'll have them all in one shot. I don't know. I'll play it by ear when I photograph them. He's got sort of a Winston Churchill, Teddy Roosevelt look to him. This one I actually like, even though the leg is way out of proportion in comparison to the head and the torso on this one. I kind of like these drawings. They're starting to have a little bit more character. Again, the point of the class isn't to do nice, finished, polished drawings. The point of the class is to learn, to study. And to that end, my drawings tend to be a lot looser and sketchier. But I noticed that when I do ones that have a little bit more finish to them, I do feel like those are something that are worth sharing. I think it is actually challenging to pick stuff that's interesting and worth sharing while still being incredibly loose and unfinished, because the majority, as you see when I share, the majority of the stuff I do in figure drawing class is very unfinished. It's very loose. I would say that these pieces fall into that category, and I'm not going to post them. But what would make this post worthy to me would be if I had a little bit more of the sense of this torso. Like, I do feel like I got some interesting forms in terms of describing this foreshortened thigh coming at you, but I really feel like it got a little bit away from me in the sense of how the layers of here's the thigh, but then the crotch going into the other leg coming out from underneath, and the sense of this leg laying on top of it. Like, I really butchered, because this is both foreshortened in terms of this thigh coming, it's not coming directly out at you, but it's coming forward more into this foot, and I really didn't get the sense of the volumes of this foot. And then this the upper torso feels just sort of placed on top of it instead of really connected. If I were able to achieve all of those things that I was missing in the drawing, even in this loose form, that's something that I would feel is worth sharing. So it's not going in, but that's why. This one I do kind of like. This one, I think I might put it in. This one, not so much. This one just feels completely off. Loss of concentration. I will tell you that trying to focus and pay attention to what you're doing is probably the most important thing you can do in any project you work on. In fact, it frustrates me a little bit because I enjoy listening to podcasts when I'm working on my comics, particularly when I'm inking. And I am tempted, when I realized how much I lose when I'm not paying attention, I'm tempted to almost say, maybe I need to stop that and just listen to music, or honestly, maybe not listen to anything at all and really just focus. I do kind of like this one. This one came out well. I don't like the one underneath it. It's too... It's not that it's too loose, it's that it's not specific enough. A drawing can be loose, but still very much call out the points of the figure that it's trying to do, the articles of clothing it's trying to describe. And this one does not. This one is loose, but it's specific. And that's the reason why I like this, the one that's on the top. There's a book I have, I think it's The Animator's Handbook, and I forget the name of the author, but it's a great book, and if you're in animation, you probably own it. The author mentioned that he was studying with the great Disney animator Milt Kahl one time, and he had asked him what music he listened to while he worked, and apparently Milt just tore him a new one, just like, no, I don't listen to any music, I don't listen to anything, because I'm focusing on my goddamn job. And there's something to be said for that, about clearing one's mind of all other distractions and focusing all of your attention on the line work and the forms and the volumes and the story you're trying to convey. I believe that there's something to that, but I feel like removing listening to music or interesting stories while I'm working might deprive me of a lot of the pleasure that I take of the creative process. So, I don't know. It could be one of those cases where I'm doing something wrong and shooting myself in the foot, but I'm being stubborn about it. And I think I will post this one. This was something interesting that once the model was done with his pose, I started looking at sort of the silhouette of the figure, and I realized I could have made an interesting drawing if I had just made some very simple changes that don't fundamentally change the story other than it improves it. Like, the pose is still pretty similar, but just moving a foot position back a little bit more and adding a little bit more rhythm that wasn't necessarily exactly what I was seeing. And this is one of the things that's really challenging, in the sense that you don't want to copy. Most figure drawing instructors will tell you, don't copy the figure, don't copy the model. You have to invent. You use the model as inspiration. But how does one invent and make changes when one is not educated enough to make intelligent choices? So that's the challenge. And my answer that I've seen is just make choices learn which ones are bad choices, and keep making those choices, because part of the exercise is learning how to make good choices on the fly. In fact, I'd say that's a big part of figure drawing classes. It's not that you come in and say, all right, I draw poorly, teach me how to draw well. It's more like, I draw poorly, teach me how to experiment with what's in front of me and make my drawing into something better. You kind of have to learn how to learn. It's weird. It's hard. This drawing's not going in. There's just nothing about it that I really like. Let's see. This one, no. These two I do like. These have some elegance to them. Very simple costume, very simple clothing. Just some leggings and a nice sweater shirt. So yeah, I think I'll post that one. And I've mentioned this before. I always feel bad we have such great models, but I'm focusing so much on the anatomy and the gesture and trying to get the figure work right, even when we're doing drapery. I feel bad that all these models are faceless, and I'm not doing them any justice in terms of giving them a sense of real identity of who they are, particularly because part of this is learning how to create a sense of person in the figure with their clothing. This one I'm not sharing because I really butchered the sense of the thigh connecting to the hip. It really feels like there's just a weird random leg coming out of this, and I didn't get the sense of the leg really attaching in the upper part of her hips, where so that the knee coming down and out of the front really connects. It feels too disconnected between the upper part and the lower part, and the fact that I didn't get her rear leg at all. So just too disconnected for me. I think I will post this one because I like both of these drawings. I mean, I went in here and started doing some more studies on top of that. I didn't get very far in it in terms of trying to. This was probably me thinking about that whole designing the figure thing and looking at changing the pose, like what would happen if the arm was up higher, and kind of experimenting with it a little bit. But yeah, I like that one. That's not bad. Head is too small. Ugh. Just destroying these. This one's not a bad drawing. It's a shame I tore up the corner. But I do feel like this one is probably one of the better ones from this particular night. This must be some old newsprint, because newsprint does eventually yellow, but this stuff I think was already yellowing when I started drawing, so. Let's see. I like this one. Nice, very fashion. We had a long, elegant model that night, and I feel like this one feels a little bit like a fashion drawing. I don't necessarily like this one so much. This one, again, that whole disconnected, kind of patchy. It's not as specific enough. However, this one, specific. Yeah, this one goes in. In fact, it almost makes me want to take the other one out. Let's see. I think if I had been able to treat the shoulder and what's going on in the upper arm the same way, well, yeah. These have the potentials of being a good drawing, but didn't quite make it. In fact, these would be prime candidates for figure drawing redraws, but I have a bunch that are clipped to my my board already that I haven't really worked from. Maybe I will save this one and add it, because this is the prime example where I see something that I can fix. Might redraw that one. This one, I'm not going to post. I think it's interesting. This is another one in that category of instead of describing, I was kind of shorthanding and symbolizing in terms of just describing the ruffles that are coming along the bottom of this dress. It doesn't really describe. It pretends to describe, but it doesn't do the job. Whereas this one, I feel a little bit more description to it. But that arm, the anatomy bothers me. It bothers me. Maybe I'll post it, maybe I won't. If you see it in the blog in a couple of months, you'll know I caved in. Not bad, but not great. This one has a nice pull in terms of the drapery coming down from the shoulder. Yeah. Yeah, see, this is the problem. At a certain point, it just devolves in me going, meh, meh. Most artists aren't happy with their work anyway, so. This one I like. This one I like. This one I'll post. It's not a perfect drawing. It's not a fantastic drawing, but it does capture some of the subtleties of the drapery. And it's not overworked, because that's actually the problem I have. I think a lot of people, like when you get stuck on one part of the body that you're having trouble with, you end up putting all of your attention to that. So you get a drawing that has one area that's really rendered, and then the rest is just bleh. This is more of, I focused on the drapery, and it was just a model who just had a cloth wrapped around a sort of a classical draped pose. And that's what I kind of focused on. So, let's see here. This, I think, is more of the same, but this is a case of me not properly really describing how the cloth interplayed with her actual anatomy. And part of that was that this was also a challenging pose, a lot of twisting of the torso, and her legs going forward and then coming back, but it being both foreshortened and hidden by her torso. That's making excuses. It was a tough pose, but I didn't capture the pose. I didn't capture anything that the cloth was doing with that pose. So, no. And just after looking at those last couple of ones, this one that I had caved on, I've uncaved. Not going to post it. And it's weird that I talk about the fact of posting these things and not posting them, and yet I'm sharing them with you. And so the whole me not posting them is not I'm embarrassed of it. It's me sharing with you how much work I go into in terms of studying the figure to get one decent drawing or to get a decent drawing here and there. So like all the stuff that I do post online when I post my comic book work, if there's anything that people like, I'm very grateful and appreciative of it. But all of this study and all the figure drawing work and the drapery work is the stuff it takes as the fundamentals to get me to the place where I can actually draw comics that hopefully don't look horrible. I do like this one. This one is probably one of the better pieces I feel like I've done in class. It's kind of like an equal level of rendering overall, an equal level of finish. I probably could have been a little bit better descriptive in this area in terms of the volumes, but overall, I'm pleased with it. Not going to nitpick it, posting it on the blog. This one, I was about to say same thing with this one. Like this one feels even better and more finished, except, again, it's loosey-goosey in here. But this is one of those things where down at the bottom, the clothing just sort of like piled a little bit, and drawing those things where you've got a pile of cloth, if it's not necessarily already designed into a shape, you kind of have to be aware of that and sculpt it into something that is both interesting and gives you a descriptive sense of what that fabric's doing. And with this, it was more of just, I ended up drawing it in just piles. I didn't make choices in this bottom area, and that bothers me. But I really do like everything else that's going on in the figure. So it is going in. But again, it's flawed. And then I think these were just some short poses at the end from that session with the model, who was, had the long draped cloth wrapped around her. And yeah, that's it. Figure drawings from the month of January.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoy these videos, please like and share them. Visit my resources page for free creativity tools and comic books at resources.jeremy.net. That's resources.gerimi.net. jeremy.net. Also, visit my main website, jeremy.net, where you can buy my comic books, art prints, and more. There's also links to my Instagram, Twitter, and other social media accounts. That's it for now. Go be creative.